and welcome to the Rental Realm, where transparency meets opportunity in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Nicole, traveling full-time in an RV, connecting with real estate agents and investors across the U.S. to give you a look at what's happening in our rental markets. From short-term to long-term rentals, we're uncovering the numbers behind these deals. I have a good friend and special guest on today, Michelle. I am so excited for you guys to get to meet her. She is so knowledgeable about the midterm rental space, but also a ton of different things within real estate in general, from her construction background to all sorts of things. We're going to jump into this and she can tell you a little bit about her story. So Michelle, thank you so much for being here today. And to start off, I would love to just have you talk a little bit about how you got started in real estate in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Yes. So the way I started in real estate was actually being a general contractor. So I've been an entrepreneur for about 15 years. Started in the staffing world. And then I got an opportunity that someone was like, hey, we need a contractor. And I didn't know what the heck to do. It was a big hedge fund and they were purchasing and acquiring like 300 properties in a month back in South Florida. Yeah. And so they said, we have trouble with labor. And I said, I want to get into real estate. At that time, I didn't know how. Everyone, I think when they want to be an investor, think, let me become a real estate agent or let me become a wholesaler. I didn't even know what wholesaling was at that time. And the funny story is I actually was sharing an office space with a wholesale company. And he always mentioned, he's like, hey, you would be great at doing, wholesale, which I've never done. But at that time I wasn't. It's so crazy how the world comes back around. So I started as a general contractor and did that for about 4 to 5 years. And then realized okay, I think it's time. And then moved back to South Texas or Central Texas. I don't even know. I don't know where San Antonio is at, but moved back to my hometown and thought real estate would be cheaper here in the San Antonio area. Unbeknownst to me, San Antonio is growing and expanding, and then started my journey going on 3.5 years already.
That's awesome. And I know you've done so many different things within real estate. So you just have such a plethora of knowledge from doing the construction background to now midterm rentals. And you have a lot of other things in the works, but curious of what brought you into San Antonio. I know this was a place that you lived when you were younger, but why? Was there another reason you decided to invest in this specific market?
Honestly, I didn't even know it was a good market and thriving market. I did not know any of that. It was really about coming back to home. I was in Miami for 14 years, did the whole entrepreneur and started my journey there. I said, hey, I want to come back home and really build a generational wealth with my family and build a legacy. And so all my companies those are the names, right? MD Legacy Crash Pad. So everything around building a legacy. And my first business partner at the time was my mom when we got into real estate investing. And she's like, I want to join. And I'm like, I have been an entrepreneur for so long. I don't know if mother-daughter dynamic's going to work out and me being the boss. But it was a very good journey when we first started. And for the first year, we did a really good run, 1.5 years. And she says, okay, I want to be a silent partner. So it was really, truly building that legacy with my family, and it continues to go. And it's crazy in the last 3.5 years of everything I've learned that real estate's been around my family and I wasn't even aware of it. So it was pretty cool that it circles back. I wish I knew my grandfather was like an OG in real estate here and commercial real estate in San Antonio. Because when I was younger, I could have followed him around and learned the game, but didn't know anything about it. And so that's why I came back to San Antonio. And then as you get into the space and you learn that you can be anywhere, like you, going all these places, and you can still be able to have real estate, not necessarily have to be boots on the ground. So,
gosh, don't we all wish when we're younger, I'm like, I didn't really have anyone in my family doing real estate, but I'm like, if I could have just went into it straight after college or even skipped college and went into real estate, but we all end up in our own path and it happens the reason it's supposed to, even though we don't know why.
I don't have any regrets because obviously our destiny and our destination is where we're at, and everything that we've stumbled along puts us where we need to be in our path without us knowing. So
absolutely. And so tell us a little bit about what you focus on specifically in San Antonio, if you do more short-term, midterm, or long-term rentals, and why you chose to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So since inception, we knew I knew I wanted to do something with the military. So I actually had gotten the information for someone that when I was looking, she was a friend of mine that was a commercial realtor here in San Antonio. And she says, hey, have you ever heard of military housing. At that time, we didn't know it was midterm rental. It was medium rentals. And we just knew that they were coming in for 12 weeks and you can rent it as a co-living space. But that word was not even around in the vocabulary at that time. And so you could rent by the room. And I really liked it because one of the non-negotiables I had with my mom was, if we're going to be business partners, we have to be able to give back, right? So this was my third company. My third company that I've been able to grow. And it wasn't always chasing the money, right? And the revenue. And that's great, but it has to have a cause and a purpose. And so when I told her the non-negotiable was that we had to make sure it was giving back or it was impacting the community, she's like, I raised you well. That was not a hard thing for me to decide, right? And so military was what we really started our business on. So I knew I wanted to do buy and hold. I studied it. I know people go through different ways. They'll start in wholesaling, fix and flipping, which my fiance was in fix and flipping before me, but we just did buy and hold, right? So very focused, because you can just figure, like, when you get and want to be in real estate, you don't know which way to start. And you want to try all of it, right? And it's like, I want to do Airbnb because everybody says you can make $1 million in a year or in a month, actually, and watch all these things. And so you just go on with your journey. So mine was buy and hold. And with buy and hold, we knew is because we can keep it long term. Medium term rentals is really MTR, is what people know now, is what we wanted to focus on. All we knew was military at that time. We have now grown into and evolved into insurance claims, into traveling nurses on our smaller units. And now we're actually diversifying the portfolio as well, because things have changed, right? The nomads are going back to work. A lot of people that were working in corporations have changed. So we're diversifying our portfolio. And so we're doing a little bit of affordable housing, a little bit of long-term rentals, and medium-term rentals is really, MTR is really where we're at. But we have hybrid, right? We have a very fancy property that has a pool. And so that's a short-term rental in itself. But I would say we really try to focus on the MTR side of it.
And I love that, because you actually just did a talk, I think 2 months ago. I didn't know that we were both in San Antonio at the same time. And you happened to be doing a talk at one of the conferences around here, talking about the differences of midterm and short-term rentals. And we're in the short-term rental space here, and it's got a lot harder for short-term rentals in San Antonio. When we started 3 years ago, I think there were 2,000 or so versus 6,000 or more at this point. And in your talk, you were actually able to explain how in some cases, and even some of our properties, have worked out better as a midterm than a short-term rental because of all those additional costs.
I mean, I really believe about, numbers. That's what real estate is about. It's really, and a business. You have to know the numbers there. You do have to have the hospitality side. I think a lot of people don't know that we're in the hospitality industry. You do have to have that component, but you can have a team with you that does that. But as the owner, as the investor, you have to know your numbers. And so if you are just focused on, I want to do just Airbnb or short-term rentals, and not focused on, let's see what we can do, and constantly looking at, okay, how can we pivot? That is something that you really want to do with your business. So my talk was on the buy and hold strategy and the different things. What I love to do is give people options. And at the end of the day, it's your business. It's your investment strategy. Do with what you will. I just provide the data, because data doesn't lie. And you say, hey, you know what? I know people that do affordable housing, Section 8 out in Detroit, Michigan, and they're killing it. That is their investment strategy. They will not look at short-term rentals. They just know it, and they've been doing it for so many years. So I tell people there is no right or wrong. And the biggest thing is that just because you like one way, and then maybe if it, it works great for 2 years, 3 years, and you want to change a little bit, like we all have been, it's okay. Like, you don't have to always say, okay, this is who I am and that's it. It's about evolving and growing with the actual, real estate as far as market.
And speaking of the numbers, can you share some of the actual numbers of one of your favorite properties with one of your midterm rentals, and kind of what were the costs to get started, and what are the profits you guys are looking at?
Absolutely. So when I started investing, I really, again, there's no right or wrong in my opinion. I invested it in a certain zip code. So I got really dialed in of knowing exactly like what the numbers were in there. We did a lot of trial and error. I know a lot of people that get into the space, they use a lot of like price labs. They use different dynamic pricing. It's a little bit different when you're looking at the midterm rental side of it. So for me, and what works for me is if I can make a net 1,000 a month, which may be like, oh my gosh, that doesn't sound like a lot to others. Really in our market, that's good for me, but that's after paying for the property management side. Because even though we property manage our own property, we still cut a certain percentage to that. So property management, utilities, inventory, consumables, non-consumables, softwares. So if we could be around that $8,000 to $1,000 profit, then I know that we're doing well. So one of my favorite properties, and I always say this because sometimes as many doors as we own, you forget how you get started, or you forget to appreciate sometimes. And every now and then I'll have a reality check and I'll go into our properties instead of one of our staff members. And it's always that first property. And I don't know why, Nicole, but it's always that first one. And that one is like our best performing. It's at a corner lot. I have, 6 figures of equity in that property. And again, I'm only 4 years in. That one we signed on June 2021, and we have that type of equity. Yeah. So I still remember, you always remember that first one you get, right? And so that's our like most producing one, and we know what the number should be, right? And so sometimes we fluctuate depending on which type of guest is going to stay with us, but we kind of know our rates. And so we're a little bit different than others that are in the market. I know a lot of people work with the dynamic pricing, but because we're looking for a certain type of guest and tenant in our properties, we know what we can. Sometimes we're a little bit priced less than you would think. We actually recently had someone stay there and they said, we were a little scared because summer was here and you were like about $100 a night less than everyone else. And I said, but you're looking to stay with us for 4 months. So we like to be able to give you that price versus other people that are on certain platforms. They're going after the 4-dayers, right? And so we're at the end of the day, when you do a month, you want to get at that. We'd like to stay within that $8,000 to $1,000 range. I know in other markets, people are making a lot more than that, but we're comfortable with that. And that kind of helps us get into that midterm rental side.
And I think for a lot of people that are doing short-term rentals even now, that might not be a number that they're able to hit. And I know personally a lot of people in San Antonio that have sold their units because year in and year out, they were just breaking even and they were okay with that at that point in time. But year after year, if you're not seeing that much appreciation that you guys got, which was incredible, but a lot of these people got in over the last year or two, and they have property management. They aren't doing anything themselves. They're hiring everything out, which I think for you guys has helped a lot. Of though you have people that are working with you, you guys started your own company to where you can hold a lot more of that money in your pocket.
Yes and no. I think sometimes when you have a property management company, because one of the things as entrepreneurs, we forget to pay ourselves, right? And so the biggest thing I say is it's 2 different businesses. The real estate investing is one business, and the whatever business you run out of it, short-term, midterm, long-term, is a business. So you have to really know why you're buying. And a crazy thing is I bought in the last 4 years. So I have an interest rate anywhere from 4%, now a little bit different, actually 2.75% as of this year, because I changed my strategy up to, I hate to say this number, but up to 9% in interest. So what we did when I first started, I was buying when they say cash. So I was leveraging hard money. I was taking loans out, and I realized that we weren't even, but maybe breaking even, or that we were just barely getting by. But my approach was we wanted long-term. So I was okay to be able to say, let's just get by getting the mortgage paid, because that is going to be, let's be honest, right? That is what we all as investors and doing the business side of it, whatever that looks like, we want to make sure our mortgage is getting paid. And so that's a big stress. And I stress that upon people that will say, hey, I want to get into the midterm rental space and I want to get into short term. And it's like, well, you have to know your numbers and why you're doing it. For us, it doesn't make sense in San Antonio market right now to throw everything in long-term rental, because our mortgage is just not sustained, and it's just above where it's at. The market hasn't really corrected itself. So even though we were in midterm rental, it was also kind of forced on us to be able to be in this space and then craft that space. But what I always say is you want to have a service-based business. somewhat of what you're doing. Your story is that, right? You were arbitraging, you were doing some of the investing side of it, but now you provide a service-based business, and sometimes it's a less stressful by you just providing what you're good at, which is the hospitality side versus doing all of it. So yes and no, you just have to be very disciplined on knowing. But for us, we use our long-term holds for a very different strategy, not just the midterm rentals. So we use it more for the appreciation and leveraging the properties to continue to buy more properties. So
that's great. And there are so many different strategies just within buying one single property. And you guys have done a good job of really analyzing what is going to be the best use of this particular property. Because someone I talked to last week, they do great. Every single house, they have 32 and everyone cash flows as a long-term rental, which I was like, yeah, in San Antonio, that's not happening anymore. So going back to what you were saying of you have to know your numbers, that's going to be the number one thing of really determining, okay, what's going to make me the most money? And a lot of people are just jumping in and getting excited. I've had so many people reach out about, I want to get an Airbnb in San Antonio because it's still cheaper compared to some other markets. And it's easy to get into as a short-term rental, though they're trying to change that up now. So we'll see how that affects the market here. But how did your rental earnings compare from your initial projections and when you first started into this market versus what they are now? Were you guys already expecting and you had your numbers set up, we need to make $800 to $1,000 a month, or have you guys earned more than you actually initially projected?
it has been up and down. So when we first started, I'm just going to be honest, right? It was different, right? We didn't know what the projections were. We're going to know what those numbers are, right? And so it really just depended as we were starting to go through the market. And so we started in 2021, nothing really, 2021, 2022. In those times, and if people have been in the game for a little bit, they know you just put your thing on Airbnb and it would book. You didn't have to worry about the professional photos and you didn't have to worry about the algorithm and all of that fun stuff. So at that time, mom was in the business. And so she didn't really know about tech and we didn't know about what's an OTA and all of this. So we're like, we were just rocking and rolling and we didn't know if you're at 95% occupancy, your pricing is probably off, meaning that you probably want to charge a little bit more. We were just testing out and trying the waters. When we started to really make this a business and figure out numbers is when we went flatlined August, September of 2021. And that is when, and I know these dates because they're very much of, now I won't say trauma, they're learning and pivotal moments in your business. And that year was just pivotal because we purchased 19 properties our first year. So purchased them, we constructed them. Yes. So anyone that wants to get into real estate, my biggest thing I'll say, take away from me is it's a very slow process. Do not try to think you have to run the race and run it as a sprint, because I did that in all my other businesses, but those were service-based businesses. Real estate's very different. So we got out of it, but we were learning what is hard money, what is using other people's money, what is the numbers that we need to be pricing our Airbnb, what do we put in the Airbnbs and short-term rental and midterm rentals, and how do we get out to the military? It's just so many things of dynamics that we're doing, and it was just so much in that first year to really figure out how is this going to work, right? And so just figuring out what those numbers are, and then once you kind of have a little bit of foundation, just keep fine-tuning it and keep fine-tuning it. And why I say that is in 2024, we went ahead and started buying subject to creative finances. And so those are where I have the 2.75 interest rates. Those are where I have the 4% interest rates. Those I can put in maybe long-term and not necessarily all. Because you start to, if you're buying and acquiring in one zip code, you start to be your own competitor. So it's a little bit of a thing too. And I didn't know that when I first started. I was like, oh, I'll just have everything in a 5-mile radius. It will be cool. Well, then you realize, what if you're just killing your own market in that too? So those are all learning things that we learned as well. I would say in this business, and you know this, or as anybody in any business, if you're not where you want to be, continue to keep pivoting. And then, or if you do know where you're at, still continue to fine tune. What does that look like? Right now, we just recently, you've heard my horror stories, but we recently went from some of the STR side of it to 3-day minimums. We've never done that. right? We've always been that 4-day minimum, 7 days. When we moved it to 3-day, and it's been it's working, and we're doing that for a strategic reason right now in our business on some of those things. And then we also, on the midterm rental side, we are going and really truly door knocking and going out to the community and getting our name out there and not relying on just the ALE solutions of the world or the platforms that everyone is on. We are literally tapping into an uncharted market that has been there. We're reaching out to real estate agents, and it's a very different dynamic and the need that they need. And so I'm excited about that because I don't think it's touched yet here, at least in San Antonio.
For sure. And I think we've all had to get more creative over the last, I don't even want to say like the last 3 years, obviously, but the last year especially just has been seemingly getting harder because we're still having more people enter the market. Everyone's excited to get into it, but we're all having to get more creative. We're at the point just being on Airbnb. We're very lucky at this point that Airbnb does bring us a lot still, but we've talked about this 10 million times of how we all are needing to really shift our perspective of what we need to do and pivot. I mean, we started off not nearly as quick as you did, but we started off in San Antonio with 5 properties in a matter of 6 months or something. And I was the person wanting to sprint and got burned bad. And that's my whole learning lesson of all of this is taking it slow and really learning to become that expert in your field. But then we also learn once we get deep into it that, oh, maybe this isn't actually the best thing I need to be doing. And I'm going to pivot and shift my focus here a little bit more, which we went from arbitrage to co-hosting. And even at this point, starting to kind of shift my perspective of what I might want to do with my own investment strategy rather than just what I'm offering as a business.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest important thing to let your audience know, right? It's okay. Because I am one that's like, okay, I'm going to stick to this. And if I decide that I'm pivoting, I'm failing. And that's not the truth. It's you're growing, right? You are growing. We're getting into that pivotal moment in our business right now. We've been doing midterm rentals and in this industry for 4 years plus. And we are still crafting it, but we're looking to start to look at other things for future and move into more on the commercial side. But there's so many different things that change. And what I will say is that, I mean, I talk to a lot of people. They're like, I got into real estate and I was wholesaling, but I hate talking to people. Well, hey, if you don't want to, that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. You don't have to do anything. Pivot, change it, because we spend so much time as entrepreneurs. There is not a 40-hour work week. And if you think getting into entrepreneurship, your first 10 years, there's going to be a 40-hour work week or a 4-day work week as the book is, that doesn't happen overnight, right? And I can tell you, being entrepreneur 15 years now, every time I get into a new industry or I grow, it's a kind of a restart, right? It's a restart. And just like now we're getting into commercial, it's going to be a little bit of a restart, not necessarily of the numbers and all of that. It's just bigger things, but I'm going to have to learn whatever industry we're going into. And I'm okay with that. But I would say is that you're not failing if you don't like it. I've talked to a lot of people on one-on-one coaching. And sometimes once we get through that 90-day program, before then we get through it's usually a 2-week program. And then I'm like, you don't even like what you're doing. Like, why are you doing it? Well, I don't want to say that I failed. Well, you don't need to say you failed. You figured out you don't like doing it. So just don't do it anymore. Like, let's figure out what you like doing. Right. And you did that, right? You were like, I like the hospitality side of it. I like to just be the person that's providing the service. I don't want to deal with the arbitrage. We've done arbitrage. The money's just for us. It didn't hit our goals and it was just not worth the squeeze. I think I'm a little bit of a hoarder. I like to own real estate. I say all the time, I don't buy purses, I buy houses. And it's true. And it's like, I buy them. So being that, thinking, just arbitraging, but we've done it. I'm like, it's just not worth it. I mean, this is a lot of work, right? Being in the space that we're in. Especially you're dealing with a homeowner and you're dealing also with the guest and tenants and also obviously your staff. But you have 2 clients that you have to please. So I give it up to you. And it's one of those things that's just a business.
We're going through some really fun stuff today. Just we love our teams that we have, but man, there's days where it's like, did I choose the right thing? We're dealing with cleaners that are wanting more money from us while we're having to balance keeping the homeowners happy. So it's a benefit of, we pretty much are looking at this as it's all profit from a co-hosting perspective, but then you're having to keep really like 3 different groups of people happy at the same time. So it can get a little overwhelming sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if someone thinks you're going to be able to stay with your first cleaner, anyone in this business can say you don't stay with your first vendors. I think the biggest thing is always making sure that I've changed out my vendors. We had a vendor for a very good time, for a long time. She was with us for about a year. And then she all of a sudden stated, well, I don't want to do, linens anymore. I'm like, well, that's 80% of your responsibility as the cleaners for our midterm rental business. I'm glad you're figuring out that you don't want to do that anymore, but that doesn't fit with our business model, right? And I think that's another good point to bring to your audience is if you are starting this business, do understand you get to run and it's your rules, it's your business. So don't feel, because I'm guilty of this, feel that you owe something to your other vendors or as you're growing and fine tuning your business. If they don't fit in the model, get rid of them. Like, it's okay. They're trying to run their business and do what they're doing. I think our dynamic now, when we're interviewing our vendors and people that are and service providers working with us, it's talking about what are my core values? What are we expecting? Because at the end of the day, they are a representation of you when you're in this business. If they do not do the cleaning right, you will be the one that is going to get the ratings. It's going to affect your income. So I really talk about value with my vendors, and I'm okay. Like, we understand now. I come from a world of loyalty of like, you got to be 4 or 5 years with, individuals. I realized not in the current state in business that we're in, right? It's not. Yeah. You got to cut it, right? Because I've been there. I don't know, have you been there where it's been like, oh, I want to keep them because they're nice.
Oh, that is my biggest thing is just, I love the people we work with because you're usually working, I think most of our cleaners we've had at least a year. And then after the year mark is where stuff seems to start falling apart. Either they think they're worth more or they don't like what they're doing anymore. And you build this relationship with them. And some of them we've gotten really close with to where it feels like a friend that you're having to let go when they're just either asking for more money, when you can find cheaper staff. And at a lot of these markets, it's like, I had to come to you for a pool cleaner last week because I went through 4 in a matter of a month and he's been great. Yeah. So it's like you just constantly are going, he's been awesome. Yes, thank you. So owe you lots of things for that. But you'll see that it's like when you're in this space, you are constantly having to find new people. And it's not in a mean way, but it's reflecting on your business and your reviews. And at the end of the day, your income. So if you're not willing to make those changes and just always be looking for the next best thing, really, it's whoever's going to be able to help you and you're helping them at the same time. So it's not ever a one-way relationship with it. It's really, you need someone that's on your team and going to be helping you earn the most at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's what I always say, right? And if we look at these big property management companies and so forth, they don't ever rely on one service provider. They have multiple and they're constantly having different ones. And like I said, when they join us, we say, hey, we're going to grow with us. We're big about having people grow, but sometimes they maybe can't have the bandwidth, right? And so you do have to make sure that you have a couple. I always say, our service providers sometimes get fat. What that means is comfortable, right? And they do. We had a landscaper. We liked him, had the relationship. And unfortunately, then our dirt, during the summer in San Antonio, you don't really have a lot of grass to cut. And so let's make sure we're cutting the bushes, making the curb appeal. I'm very short. I'm 5 foot. And if I'm having where the vines are coming in the walkway and in my face, I can only imagine how it is with the clients. And sometimes common sense isn't so common. It was one of those things that it was like, okay, we've had a couple of conversations and talks and at the end of the day, it was like, okay, well, apparently this is just it's not working out anymore, right? And we had to find someone else. And every time when we are like, man, this doesn't work out, we find someone else, then it's like you get refreshed and a reset. And it's like, man, actually, this was probably the best thing we needed for this, right? So there's always those pivotal moments that we think that, oh my gosh, it's happening, to us, and it's really happening for us, and that we don't see it hindsight, right?
1,000%. And it's just constant because you have so many different providers in the midterm and short-term rental space. From if you have a pool, you're dealing with pool guys, lawn guys, your handymen, your cleaners, pest control guys. Like, it becomes a lot of different people that you're dealing with. So I think some people get into this just thinking, oh, it's going to be a fun little business and I'm not going to have to do that much. And then you're in charge of minimum 5 different vendors that you're dealing with. So it's not just your guest you're dealing with a whole bunch of different business owners, which some of us are a little harder to deal with than others too. After a few years of being in this space, you're like, everyone wants to do the best with their business, right? And we've had our handful of people where I'm like, I can't believe they're talking to me like that they're expecting that out of us when they're the service provider. But you get all sorts of different fun things in both the midterm and long term has its own things too, but it's definitely a lot more when you're dealing with midterm and short-term rentals, I think.
And the thing about it, I think, is just knowing your vision, like knowing where you're wanting to go and the whole point of doing it. And I'll go back to that, as business, right? And so if you're not liking it, like, and for us, we have our struggles, but then we have our wins, right? When we hear that we just recently had someone 4 months was staying in a hotel, and it was a 150-pound dog, a cat, 2 teenagers, as well as the parents, all staying for 4 months downtown in one hotel. And so we usually will go do these visits when they want to do tours. I was like, let's go and let's be a little bit more creative, because I know we have a little bit more competition. So we did the whole make some baked cookies as they come in, because I'm about senses and smells. But we ended up having a conversation with them. And I said, where can I bridge the gap from the insurance company to you coming to my front door and knowing who we are, because you've been 4 months in a hotel. So where can we do? And he says, you know what? Education. I was not aware that I had an option or choice to be able to stay in a house. I thought we assumed it was just a hotel, but as my family was starting to get kind of divided, because we're staying in one, and I can imagine the teenagers wanting their own space and so forth. He says, I started investigating and I started looking and I started, really researching, and I just kept knocking on the door of our relocation specialist. And finally, they were able to find me a place or give us options. And we were one of those options. And we had a conversation with them, and they've been staying with us. Actually, they're on their month 2. So that is a rewarding of this, right? That of the business that we choose to be in is we are helping families right now that are going through disaster or their memories may be burnt. It was so crazy. Their story is if they were a first-time home buyer, they were only in their home for 2 months, and there was electricity that hit the house, and the whole house just so first time home buyer, I can only imagine, you're so excited by purchasing that home, you're living the dream, and then all of a sudden your house is destroyed and you're displaced. So we have many, many stories of what we hear, and that's the rewarding that oversees everything else that we've done. And so again, when I said I started in this business, it was to impact the community. And so those are the things we purchase, right? Investment properties. We like to purchase from VAs, from veterans with VA loans. We have helped individuals going into the senior community, right? People don't think about that, like who you're buying from. And so a lot of our homes in an area that we bought are very senior, they're about to get into their next life, which is into home care or into facilities that they're going to be able to, nursing homes and all of that. So for us, it's a very people-based business. And so it's starting from when we invest to the properties to when we, in the construction world, and then getting them into the housing side of it. And just how can we be better operators and providers and so forth, and knowing that there's that rewarding side of it. Every business has its ups and downs. If you have a restaurant business, you're going to have your goods and bad days, and what the operational side, and to owning a mechanic shop, right? We just choose to be in this business.
They all have their great parts about it, and then the days that you question why you got into it. I haven't talked to any business owner that every day has been an amazing day. And if they say that, they're just one of those truly optimistic people that I think are lying just to keep themselves sane. But we all have those days. And Just to get into a little bit more, you've done some pretty creative stuff for increasing your rental income that you guys received, and you're doing some cool stuff now. I know you've got into sub-2 deals just to help make it way better for our bottom line when we have that 2.75% interest rate. But what are some other strategies you've used that you've seen help increase your rental income?
Yeah, so we have to increase what we're doing. A lot of our properties, we like to use local businesses as for our designers. So if we're, instead of going to your retail shop to go and get like the photography or the pictures, we'll use a small business here. So almost like our properties become kind of like a museum. And so we're able to then, I forget the actual terminology of it, but they'll be able to put their actual art on our walls. Yeah, and so you get the local artists. So it gives that more feel of the local. They're coming to San Antonio. And then they also display their art and they can also purchase it. So remember, we have a lot of individuals that are usually staying at our properties that are locals. So we're doing that. We are looking to get into with the local community. We just met someone that does like the aromas, right? And so instead of utilizing what we're using, we're going to start using more holistic aromas and the candle waxes and all of that. And so getting those affiliate programs set up. Right. Everyone, if they do decide to come here for a vacation or for certain hotspots, we are signed up with a Vidiator, I believe it is. This is all kind of Vin's side of the business, so my business partner. And so we sign up for that. So if they're going to go to Six Flags or they're going to SeaWorld, they'll just use our QR code and we'll get a little bit of a commission. So the affiliate program, we've really been leaning in on of how we can use that other than them just staying with us in our home. Right. And so we have that. We do a lot of other incentives like early check-ins. We're starting to work with individuals and operators that are in Turo to be able to provide our properties those options. So we lean in on the affiliate side of the business. And then obviously what everyone else knows, which is the early check-ins, the late checkouts, our charge for that. I think one of the biggest things for us is also now giving incentives to anyone that may have a lead that comes in. So in the midterm rental space, if you have a certain amount, you're only going to be able to fulfill your properties. And then after that, if someone reaches out to you, you're like, okay, my properties are filled, there's nothing else. Reaching out and knowing that we're top of mind for them so they can provide us that commission. So we do referrals that way. And like I said, right now, we're really advocating with real estate agents to be a top of mind for them when their clients are going through transitional housing. And so if anybody's ever purchased a new development home or a home, they basically, sometimes they have to get rid of one loan and get into the other home, but it may not be ready. So giving a referral, because real estate agents love referrals. So really affiliates, referral programs, and utilizing the local community, like the local restaurant down the street. And they'll have a QR code. And then from there, we can get, either do trades or make some additional income that a lot of people aren't thinking about.
That's genius and truly something we haven't done with the affiliates. Like it's been something back of mind where I'm like, oh, that would be cool. Like for our properties in Florida, we have people looking out for boat rentals and where they can get kayaks. And I've always been like, oh, I should reach out to some of these local vendors, but you're there and you're doing it. And it definitely makes it worth it for both people because you also have a trusted person you're sending them to as well. It's not just looking on Google and saying, oh, this company works, I think. But when you have that relationship with the local restaurant down the street, it's like, that they're going to take care of them as well when you're constantly referring clients their way.
It adds up, right? And so it may be just a little bit, 5% here, $10 here, there, but then it adds up. And so that affiliate program, and then you're now working with small business owners. I'm a big component of that. Like the small business owners help the small business owners and also other operators. You and I have referred business back and forth from one another because even though we're still in the same space, you do something a little different than I do, right? And so that's a big thing is, being collaborative and have a collaboration versus competitive. I think a lot of, as you get matured in your entrepreneurship, you realize having that collaboration is better and not thinking, hey, I got to be better than the next operator that's down the street. Everybody does things a little different like we do as well, right? So we know what we kind of want, but we started that program and we're still developing it. right? So just about 2 weeks ago, we were able to find the aroma person. So it's just really trying to put different things. A lot of what my responsibility is, okay, great. Here are our numbers. Let's look at the profit and loss. How much are we spending on internet? How much are we spending on this provider? Where can we pull and see like an alarm system that we've been utilizing for all our properties? Well, I know that now there's more technology and better technology that is, or even efficient technology that's half the cost. So do we really need to go out and buy the big equipment, or can we, now that, Ring now has a whole system and all of this? So always looking what other operators are doing. And so I fine tune, again, as I mentioned, you get the business concept, but then you go back and you look, where can we fine tune? I think the biggest thing in our industry are linens. Where can we go and buy linens? I think the biggest controversy is, do we use white or colored? Like, do we go all white because that's like what everybody does in the hospitality, in the hotels? Or can we do color? And do we do blues and grays? And it's so funny because I was like doing a poll with all, and it really just depends on who your cleaner is. And I literally was talking to 5 cleaners at one time. And these were other cleaners that I know through the fold and through the business. And one will say, I want colors. And one will say, I want white because it's bleach. So honestly, we're running our business. And the great thing is we can do whatever the heck we want, right? Obviously that is ethical, right? But yeah, so always fine tuning that. I pull my P&Ls all the time. And that's what big corporations do. Where can we save money or where can we spend a little bit more money in and maybe take away from a marketing budget? I'm giving an example, or from something to be able to have that guest experience and so forth. Like, we pride ourselves saying we don't have pickleball courts in the back and we don't have selfie walls, but we do have very expensive mattresses because the people that stay with us, our average is about 7 months, right? So you won't have a selfie wall with us. You won't have yet. Maybe you can start to designing some of ours. We won't have the wallpaper, but we definitely will have the 1 gig, the high Wi-Fi and so forth. So,
and those are the expenses that you need to look at of what's going to be best for that property. I mean, the short-term rentals, you can get away with not having the most comfortable mattress in the world since most people are staying 2 days. But when you have someone staying there for 7 months, the comfort, I think, is going to be the most important aspect for a lot of them. But would love, since we started talking about expenses a little bit, for someone that might be interested in looking at San Antonio, what are some of the fees that you're seeing on your monthly basis, from kind of what are the taxes and what's insurance like? Do you guys have like a proper insurance company or steadily that you use, and just the overall kind of expenses that you're seeing in your market?
First off, property taxes are ridiculous here as an investor. We don't have state taxes here, but we definitely do have those property taxes, right? And so a lot of people say, well, Texas is a good state to invest. You just have to know your numbers. And when I say that, is my business partner, also fiance, he comes from California. So he's one of those Californians that come to San Antonio. And when he heard what I was paying on property taxes, he's like, what the heck? What I'm paying is what you can get like a $2-3 million home in California, apparently. I don't know. This is the only market right now that we're investing in, right? But yes, so we use a combination. Again, I go back and forth on every annual basis and I do price matching. So on our internet, right, is between Spectrum and AT&T, Spectrum and AT&T. Now Google Fiber is coming in here. And if you do that, if you think about as many properties as we have, you get that promo for that first year. They'll move it up and it'll slowly increase $10 to $20. And then you think about that $10 to $20 times 14 properties, right? Or how much is that? That adds up. Same thing with insurance. So we were all with a certain insurance company. We had an agency. Then this past year, we started to split them up. So because someone got acquired. So it was State Auto that got acquired by Safeco. So we have a little bit in Steadley. Steadley we do. Believe it or not, I have some in USAA, which is a very A-rated, and they're starting to do a lot. You just want to make sure that you do have the coverage, right? You have the coverage for rental. I know some people will not tell your insurance company that you're running a short-term or midterm rental. That's going to bite you in the butt later. And I say that because if something does happen, then you are trying to cut corners, you're going to be kind of screwed, right? Because then they won't insure it. So it may cost you a little at the beginning, but cushion that cost within your nightly rate. right? Figure out what does that look like. If you really do it, of course, over what it looks like on a daily basis, because that's kind of how you run your metrics, regardless if you're a midterm rental or short term, the average daily rent rate, you want to make sure that you do that as well with the insurance side. Believe it or not. So a lot of people probably just go on to a pricing dynamic and say, okay, this is what the pricing is in this market. Really understand your pricing on what we talked about. Like, I am crazy about this, but I know a cost of average for each guest that stay with us. So our cost per guest on average is about $35, and that's per guest, right? And so that's if they're staying 4 months. And so that's one of the things how I do it, but I'm a little crazy when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so insurance, what you were talking about, but a lot of what we do is we keep every year, I'm like, okay, who can give me a better deal? I know it sounds funny, but it's true, because someone always wants to earn your business. And if they're going to want to earn your business, they'll give you those discounts. And those discounts help you, especially if you're even co-hosting. Think about that, right? I don't know how much of the co-hosting side you do of managing your clients' utilities, but maybe even having that option or saying as an additional service, like, let us kind of manage that or see what providers are in the area. I recently just started a new MTR. We just purchased, so we were fully furnishing. The gentleman is 50%, it's Spectrum, but because he was door knocking, he is 50% lower than what I'm paying for right now. And for more, or 1 gig, right? And so I told him, so can I go ahead and turn off all with the same provider, but can I turn it all off and then redo a contract with you? He's like, I can't tell you that you can do that, but if you do it, I can help you. We're going to save almost $750 a month. That will go back to our bottom line. And that's just the internet. So imagine everything else that you're doing. So so you want to have someone on your team. You can even have a VA that does it and says, hey, look at our profit and loss. Where can we save? Where do you think we can save? Or what can we do? Even if it's pennies add up.
Yeah, some of those fixed costs that we're like, oh, I can't change that much. You can, to a lot of extent, even for our pool guys. I think that's something here we've seen of some people charging $200 versus $275, which $75 a month is a lot. Maybe not for one property, but if you guys have 14 plus properties, if you can save $75 across all of them, that's a ton of money that you're getting in your pocket at the end of the day. So far, what has been the biggest surprise in terms of expenses or even like your income in general since you first started in San Antonio?
So the biggest surprise, I would say, we depend, unfortunately, and until you really get your boots off the ground, but I don't care what anybody says, if you're in midterm rentals, short term, we depend a lot on technology and we depend a lot on lead generation. So Airbnb is one of the premier platforms here in this space. And everybody, it's like saying, Q-tips. Everybody knows Q-tips is Q-tips, but it's really cotton swabs. It's just the brand name is Q-tips. So anytime we're out pitching to new others or giving people, about our industry, everybody says, oh, you have an Airbnb. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. Airbnb is a lead generation. And so the biggest surprise to me is all the changes, right? And, you want to make sure, and if you're not really trying to get direct bookings and learning to creatively get your guests information and doing outside promos or having them book to your direct site, you are doing yourself an injustice, because just like being on social media, and if you're running something on Instagram, they own it. That's their platform. And we all know the ebbs and flows in Airbnb, that they always change things and are constantly doing different things. And I hear it all the time is, I'm not getting any more bookings. We recently just had that happen. And that can be with technology. And we realized, and what we understood was that we were depending on a lot of other individuals versus our own efforts of direct bookings. And so that was the biggest thing for us, I think, and it has been in our business, is really, do we have that database that we can go back to people? If we gave someone a really good experience, that referral will keep going. Do we really have our Google reviews up to be able to have those reviews? So we're constantly looking in those ways, because we recently did just have, and it's crazy because you will have some other information coming out about it, but we were dead in the water for 60 days. And it was because we were scaling to go into a new platform, a software that we thought was going to help us. And quickly did we realize, because we know our numbers, that there was something going on. And the good news of that story is that we decided to make changes and 60 days doesn't sound like we made changes quickly enough. 60 days of our business was hurt. And again, we had to really troubleshoot and figure out what that was. We quickly pivoted. And after that, within 3 hours, we were able to get less than 7 days. And this just happened. We were able to get up to 90% of our places booked again. Did we have a loss? Absolutely. Are we going to be able to bounce back that quickly? No, but we learned. And what did I learn from that is that we were really depending on Airbnb and we were depending on other softwares. And we really need to get our referral game back up and our direct bookings and have people come direct to us. There's different ways that you can do that. But I think that's the biggest thing in our industry and things that I've learned. And the other thing is just things are changing and you have to keep up with that. We're in an election year that does affect bookings, that does affect real estate, that affects everything that we're doing. You have to keep up with the times of, are people going back to work? Are you only focused on one type of, demographic, or how can you be able to continue? It's a business. And if you want to do this as a hobby, I don't know if you'll be as successful, right? Don't do it. But I see people getting into real estate and they're a W-2. Again, they have that for us, we're all in. This is our business. So we are constantly looking at different ways and dynamics. But I think it's the biggest thing, other than the epiphany of my fiance realizing about 1.5 years in that he was in the hospitality industry.
So many people get into this just thinking, okay, I'm in real estate. And it's like, when you get into the midterm and short-term space, like, you're running a mini hotel. You are totally in the hospitality industry. And we've met so many people over the years who are like, you shouldn't be in this industry. If you don't enjoy it at all, fine. Like, you can still invest in it, but hand it off to someone that it's going to work. And we had that firsthand happen with one of our arbitrage units. The owner was asking $750 more per month in rent, which did not make sense in this market. And he took over it. And we had 4.97, I think, with 50 reviews in a year. And he took over it, same house. We left all the furniture there. He had a 3-star rating with his first month and he just cut it off. We never saw the Airbnb listing again. I think after 2 months, he was like, well, this isn't working. And it's just funny that people get into it thinking, oh, it's going to be really easy. And we're like, wait till you get that 2 a.m. call of the AC's not working in the middle of summer in San Antonio. Definitely not passive.
Yeah. So as far as the co-hosting, I mean, that's an opportunity for you guys, right? If someone's I was speaking to someone the other day and they're starting their co-hosting business. And she's like, I love hospitality and I was a realtor and I honestly don't like that side, but I like this side of the business. And some people, that's what they're good at. And they're good at to be able to have those conversations. And that is an opportunity. Well, I think for co-host is that when an operator or a real estate investor has run their first Airbnb and then realize that they're in the wrong seat and all they want is to do the investing side, which can happen, and have someone else and pass it off to do the co-hosting side of it, they understand your value. And I think it's a little bit easier for you to sell. For you to be able to say, now you know the calls at 2:00 in the morning. Now you understand like what we do, because it's not just let's put a guest in the property. With all the creativeness, now you have to know the algorithms, know the SEO, like we talked about direct bookings. You have to know what the prices are. What is your competitors doing? How can you make this experience better? So for co-hosting and what you do, Nicole, I think it gives I love talking to those clients because we're looking to get into co-hosting as well, but more on the midterm rental side. Having that conversation, I love talking to those homeowners or operators that are like, I've done it, I get it, and yeah, I wasn't good at it, right? And when I start talking numbers and dynamics and I'm like, do you know what your property can make? Do you understand that you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and you only have 2 of those with a queen size bed? Or you have 4 plates for a 3-bedroom home when you should have about 6 guests. Like, there's certain things that we've been able to over the years understand, like this is what works and this is what doesn't work. But that again is not a side hustle. That is knowing the business and working in it, right? I would say anybody that wants to do Airbnb as a side hustle, please just don't do it, because it's not a side hustle, right? There are so many co-hosts out there that know this as a business. Pay the 15 to 20 to whatever, percentage, depending on what market you're in, 25% in some markets. Pay that fee to be able to understand that and leave it to the experts. And if you just want to do real estate investing, just do the real estate investing, right? It's two different things. As I mentioned, they're two different concepts. We're just doing both. And it's because I have a team in place, not because I'm doing this on my own. I honestly, a lot of mine's acquisitions, right? So a lot of the guest interfacing is a lot to do with my team, and they're the ones that are handling it, not myself. I do acquiring of property owners, acquisition of the properties. So it's not just a one-man show by no means. I'm sure people can do it, but not us.
I don't even do it by myself. It definitely takes a team for this business. And if you are looking just to be an investor, contact Michelle and she can get you set up for, you can be a private money lender or something with her. But if you are just looking, Michelle's a great person to contact about that.
That's our thing, right? We buy these properties, and that's a whole nother conversation, but we get these properties, and when we get into this, a new MTR or a new property we're acquiring, we do zero out of pocket for including the furniture. So we could always later on talk about that, but that is something that I talk about, that we get our furniture, everything, all expenses paid up are at the beginning. So we're not coming out of pocket. What we're tasked to do is make sure that we're making these properties cash flowing. And then after that, our, private money lenders get either exit out of the first year, second year. But when we purchase properties now, especially subject to, we're zero out of pocket. We leverage other people's money.
We'll have to do a good conversation about that one day too, because that's definitely a whole other ball game when we're getting into that. But last 2 questions to just kind of wrap things up a little bit. So first, what has been just the most memorable moment since you've started investing, whether it's good, bad, or crazy?
For me, it's just, like I said, sometimes I go so fast and not just appreciate what we have. Sometimes I have to pinch myself. There was a time that going to the title company and just signing and getting a new HUD statement. And it's like, okay, now we got to go in. Now we got to do construction. Now we got to do staging. Now we got to get on the market, and not really just saying, wow, look at the mini empire that we've been able to build in the last few years. And yeah, I'm a real estate investor, and it's hard for me to realize that sometimes. I think just slowing down and kind of, everybody says, just stop to smell the coffee. I think that's it. Right. And I don't sometimes. So that is one of the biggest things. And also is that we're constantly learning. I'm constantly growing and learning. I don't know everything. And that's the beauty of real estate. And I guess just the industry we're in. Every time I'm going to these networking events and we're learning, like I said, a little bit about the commercial side. And now I'm learning about capital markets and what individuals are doing. So that's a memorable thing, and knowing that, yeah, this is what I'm building in the career. And then just the touch points, as I mentioned earlier, right? And who are we having at our properties? How are we impacting them? What experience are we giving them? I mean, we had, someone that stayed with us that she was homeless for 2 days, not because she didn't have insurance. It's because the insurance wasn't speaking to the adjuster. And it was like she had the insurance, she was a homeowner and all of that. And so we were able to help that situation, and we were able to get her in our property, and we're like, we'll deal with it with the insurance companies. So hearing those stories, those make it worthwhile than what we're in, knowing that I am building a legacy and able to pass that on to my family, and then also helping other women. I think a lot of individuals, for me, entrepreneur women or people want to get into real estate and they just don't know how. It's the relationships. We've been able to have individuals that have retirements, and they've been able to partner with us and not do the investing side of it, but become a private money lender and be our bank. And we've been able to change lives with that. We were able to 8X my mom's 401k retirement just with real estate. And so hearing those things is crazy. It's crazy, but it's an impactful thing because we're not doing, like I said, we're not doing this alone. So we have private money investors and they'll check in and who are you hosting, private money lenders? And we tell them you're just making a difference in providing homes and helping us being able to do that. So those have been the memorable things, right? And those have been the things that make it all worthwhile. It's been a crazy roller coaster for the last, I can't believe, almost 4 years, but yeah.
It flies by for sure, but the good moments is what keeps us in that game. And what would be the one piece of advice you'd give to investors that you wish you knew when you started?
You won't know everything when you start, right? And if you're a lot like me, you feel like that you may be failed, right? And I think the biggest thing is fail forward. I think the other biggest thing is for a very long time, I didn't really need to have guidance or help, but in my other businesses. In real estate, always lean on people that have done things, better, more, or faster than you. We have mentors. Mentorship is a big thing. We have mentors that give us just a different perspective and stuff. And also, I know you say one thing, but that's the biggest thing is just believe in yourself, know what you're doing, and know that you can be able to, when you're failing or you feel you're failing forward. There are many times that I'm like, am I in the right seat? Am I doing the right thing? But I know I'm here for a reason and for a purpose, right? And so it's just those reality checks within yourself, right? It's the mindset.
I love the failing forward though, because it's so true. And everyone that is a successful entrepreneur or real estate investor, everyone has failed at some point in time. And if anyone tries to say that they haven't, that's not true. I don't think there's a single person that hasn't failed, but it's about continuing to push forward through all of that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It was awesome getting to talk to you today. And please let people know where would be the best place to contact you if they would like to reach out.
Absolutely. So all my social channels is at My Story Michelle. So we are rolling out a new series of YouTube as far as episodes. So feel free to check into there, but it's going to be at My Story Michelle. And that's with 2 L's. And you will be able to hear anything about real estate from purchasing with other people's money to all the way to midterm rentals, short-term rentals, and everything that we do.
Love it. Thank you so much. Great chatting with you today. And I'm sure you'll be having some people reach out soon.
All right. Perfect. Thank you so much.